This is a bit of a different video than what I normally post because it's about an entirely different game, Grand Archive, and it's a game I've been playing since the Ultra Edition for their first set came out all the way back in 2023. And personally, I find the game to be really fun. It's very different than the games I normally play, which is I think what drew me into it. It was just testing different skills and it felt refreshing. Though I do only play it completely casually. So this video here today is discussing a deck concept that I've been tinkering with for months now, on and off, that I wanted to share because whenever I search Grand Archive content, I don't really find all too much. I mean, there's definitely some dedicated competitive content. There's some deck profiles out there from those players, but I don't find anything that truly feels like it's in the casual space, just kind of discussing crazy deck ideas that are being tested. So I just wanted to kind of throw a video into that niche because I like talking about the decks that I'm trying out, no matter what game it is. So this deck in particular, as the name will say, I call it Huaji Combo Jin, and it is centered around this card here, Huaji of Heaven's Rise from Abyssal Heaven. I believe that's what the set was called. And, oh, it says right there, yeah, Abyssal Heaven. And what drew me into this weapon was I just thought it was so cool that we had just a card that could transform, and I wanted to see what I could do with it. And so, particularly this deck was looking at being able to get this out, transforming it into Huaji of Abyssal Fall, and use the fact that unique warrior allies can attack with it, and it can deal massive amounts of damage. So, the other part of this combo, because the whole intention is that we're trying to use this weapon to win the game on the spot once it's set up. And that unique warrior ally is Zhaoyun Dragon's Blood from Mortal Ambition. And the cool thing is because this has immortality, or can gain immortality, I can deal it the damage, the 10 damage that Huaji causes to get the extra 3 buff to its attack without actually killing this thing. And since it can also bolster its own attack, this can end up swinging in for 10 damage with the Huaji. But obviously that's not enough to kill any champion. So to combine with that, I also threw in Rallied Advance, a warrior attack card that on attack wakes up an ally I control. So the idea of the combo is that we set up Zhaoyun with Immortal, we set up Huaji transformed into the Abyssal Fall form, and what we do is we swing Zhaoyun with Abyssal Fall for 10 damage, use Rallied Advance to attack with our champion for at least 1 damage, though ideally we also want to swing with another weapon, whether it be Huaji that we've given additional durability counters to, or the Shangji of Self-Sacrifice, doesn't matter which, but the point is that we're attacking with it, and then the inherited effect of the level 1 Jin lets us give the Zhaoyun an additional attack so he can swing for a second time with the Huaji for a total of 11 damage. So that's 21 damage all in one. That's a lot. Or actually, no, sorry, 22 damage because I forgot the Rallied Advance. So that's a lot all in one go and can hit most level 2 and below champions. And then as long as we're swinging with a weapon with a Jin or have gotten some early damage, we should have the extra damage to kill level 3 champions as well. So that is the general concept that this deck is built off of, is I want to achieve that combo, and all the deck choices are curated to try to make that possible. So getting into the deck list itself, of course, since we're to run this deck, it runs cards of the Exia element. We run the Jin line since it's our only Exia deck at current, and I believe Huaji, yeah, it's got the class bonus, so we need it to be Jin as well. And we're actually throwing it into a Wind package because Wind, I found, gave this deck the level or had the consistency cards that really jumped out at me to be able to get this deck to work the most consistent that it can. Not to say that there aren't other options out there. I don't really play Fire at all, so there might be some good consistency in Fire that I just haven't looked at. And in general, Water, I was just more drawn to the Wind side of stuff, and I play a ton of Water decks, so I wanted to play Wind, honestly. So this isn't to say that Wind is the best element, but it is the one that I chose because I saw some fantastic ways to just kind of quickly dig through my deck to find the cards I need. And to align with that, we've got Fragmented Spirit of Wind. The reason I run this card is I didn't feel like I needed the 7 cards, and I value that Glimpse 6 and that ability to then draw into the additional card later on. So then, of course, the Jin, we got the level 1 Jin, level 2 Jin, because we need to run those to be able to play the level 3 Jin, since it's got the Jin lineage condition. That's a good word for it. Then, of course, we've got our Huaji of Heaven's Rise transformed into Huaji of Abyssal Fall. We kind of already covered that one. And then we've got our Zhao Yun, running it at 4 copies because we need to find this guy. So I max it out to make sure that I can find it as consistently and quickly as possible. And then 4 Rallied Advance for the same thing. And the other nice thing about Rallied Advance is that if I draw into extra copies, I can use this card even before I do the combo, just to be able to put on some extra damage. Like, got a Zhao Yun that's immortal out, Rally Advance it to just start kind of controlling the board, getting in some extra damage, seems pretty good as well. So that is definitely the main core of the deck. And the other thing, since we're going so hard into this combo, we need ways to insulate it, especially since our combo pieces need to survive on board for multiple turns to be able to pull off this combo. So those cards, I kind of call them insulator cards to be able to help out. And there's a few of them here. The first one is the Regalia deck. That is what this is called. Material deck, not Regalia deck. Material deck is the Quicksilver Grail, is the Divine Relic I choose to play in this deck. And the reason I like it is because it gives protection to our Huaji when we go to materialize it, especially since I do end up testing against a lot of water decks, so Fracture Edge is quite annoying. And essentially its whole purpose here is it lets me materialize Quicksilver Grail, banish the Huaji underneath it. That way I can have my materialize, or my recollection step to bring back cards into my hand to have resources to be able to protect the Huaji later. It's just a bit too risky. I find it to be too risky to just hard materialize it, especially if I'm completely tapped out on influence to be able to protect it. The next card is actually Sundering Moon. We're not actually running Sundering Moon. It's just a placeholder for Scarlet Tassel because when I went to update this deck in the Sylphie deck builder, Scarlet Tassel had not been added, and I actually did not check before making this video. So it might be there by now. I don't know. But Scarlet Tassel is the new one from the Alter Edition of Mortal Ambition, and this seemed to fit right in with the goal of the deck, as is Regalia. So I mean, we could have consistent access to it, and just has the simple effect to Regalia Link to any Regalia that we have, and then we can pay 2 and rest Scarlet Tassel to give the linked Regalia Omni Shroud until end of turn. So just a guaranteed way to set up protection for our Huaji here. The challenge with this card, of course, is it needs a materialize step, same with Huaji. So really, where this comes in handy is if we can get to my next materialize phase without losing the Huaji, I can materialize that card to give it protection right away, guaranteed. Just puts a bit less pressure on drawing specific cards in the main deck to be able to protect it. Speaking of those cards from the main deck, I'm going to go a bit out of order. I want to cover Blood Shroud Temper because this is the main way that we protect it, giving target weapon an Omni Shroud. So same cost, it's just a card we need to draw into. The other nice thing is if we have 20 more damage, put 2 durability counters onto the Huaji, which then, because notably when you transform it, keeps the 2 durability counters from the base form. So we only get 2 swings for it, but if we can put in some extra ones, that means we can swing with this with Jin as well, or really just do a double Zhao Yun swing and the Jin swing. We have enough durability counters to be able to do that. 3 copies of this card because it's just an ancillary card. If I don't have the combo set up, I'm not playing this card typically, so I don't feel like I need a full 4 copies. As long as I find it in the late game, I'm good, and 3 copies felt like it's done enough to be able to do that. Though notably, I do like multiple copies, so as I'm explaining this, I can see merit to running this at max copies, because the more the merrier, because it means that you've got more ways to protect against your opponent's potential removal cards. The other card I classify as Insulatory, that also can be considered non-engine, is Incap. And this is just the negate card for the deck. Just a great way to stop those action cards that are targeting our Huaji or even our Zhao Yun in their tracks. This one is a bit expensive because it does cost 4 since we're not in the assassin class, but nonetheless, I do find that it comes in handy. And typically by the late game, we do have so much influence that it's not difficult to play this card. 4 copies because it's just a generally good card, because of course you can use it for more than insulating your combo play. You can use it to also impede your opponent's critical plays as well, prevent them from winning. So those are the insulatory cards. Next up, let's just talk about the engine of this deck. I'm going to start with the main deck. So first, let's just kind of go in. How are we leveling up? Because of course we need to get to our Exogen to even be able to transform our Huaji and get out our Zhao Yun. So for our early game Floating Memories, not Fairy Whisper, we've got Favorable Winds, just real simple. This can also, buffing ally defense can come up as well nichely, but mostly it's just their 1-cost Floating Memory. And then we got the Reclaim, which is relevant for other part of our engine, how we're drawing cards and digging through our deck, be able to return an ally to hand, but also conveniently has Floating Memory. So only 4 of those, but again, we have the Fragmented Spirit with that Glimpse 6 to help dig for those sorts of cards. As for the, I was about to go into the draw engine, more Floating Memory, but for later level ups is the Calming Breeze, since we need to be level +1 to get that Floating Memory. Just great anti-aggro tool to stave off some early damage. While of course Jin has Immortal, so it can't die. We don't typically like to rush up on damage because we do need time to be able to set up the combo. So being able to slow down the opponent at any stage of the game is highly welcome with Calming Breeze. All those at 4 copies because they are just that good and also just fine to play in the early game to get the Floating Memory. And then our ideal way to get into our level 3 is, of course, our Dungeon Guide. Pretty self-explanatory for a level 3 deck. We run 3 because I'm mostly playing against other level 3 decks that are running Dungeon Guide, so Heavenly Guide is a nice tech that can help maintain influence if they use their Dungeon Guide before we level up into our level 3. So do really like that card. 3-1 split has felt pretty good for that, to be able to just have that option. And a lot of times if I see Heavenly Guide, it's such a great kind of catch up or swing back into the lead kind of card that I definitely don't want to cut it. It is hard to justify, though, running more than that 1 copy, since your opponent isn't always guaranteed to be dungeon guiding, even if they do run it. As for how we're digging through our deck, I'm going to cover first the Windmill Engineer, just imbue 2, and on enter, if it's imbued, you draw a card. So this is our main way for drawing cards from our deck. I'm going to pull up my notes real quick. And obviously we have Reclaim to be able to loop back to hand, play it down, so just draw another card every time we play it. We're refreshing, and then be able to combo with stuff like Reclaim with the Floating Memory, pretty much replaces itself, and then when you play out Windmill Engineer, it replaces itself. It means that you're building up just a ton of influence from hand and not actually losing out on anything. The other way we can bring this back to hand is Escape the Wreckage, which is that Floating Memory, draws a card into memory. So just more ways to dig through our deck while also looping back our main way to draw. And finally, we got the Asian Protector. This one can loop it back, but is also just a big body on board that can help stave off some aggro or try to threaten opponents' threats as well by attacking. 4 of that, just be able to loop back. And then whenever I didn't find this package, specifically the Windmill Engineer, I was noticing this deck was having trouble to actually dig through its deck. So I threw in a secondary draw engine with Forest Cakes, just simple 2 cost to play, on enter, draw a card. Technically better than the Windmill Engineer, but isn't a buy to be able to attack with. And the other way that we're looping this card is with the Baby Green Slime to be able to suppress an item or weapon. And that one just banish a Forest Cake, bring it back, you draw a card. Awesome. A bit slower of a draw. Like Forest Cake is definitely quicker because it draws you a card instead of drawing into memory, unlike Windmill Engineer. But at the same time, when you suppress it, you have to wait till the end return to be able to get that draw. But I guess it doesn't really matter. I say that now, and actually it is faster since you straight up draw a card versus throwing into memory, so you don't have to wait for a recollection phase. We'll amend there to that. We're only running 3 of this because this card doesn't help typically if we don't find our Forest Cakes outside of some niche scenarios. I think this is the final way we're digging through our deck. Let me read through the deck list again. Yeah, the final consistency card we have for this deck is the Fairy Whisper. Just a nice glimpse through, reveal the top card of your deck, and miss one element, you add it to your hand. We run plenty of wind cards to be able to use that effect, so we're not losing out on influence playing it, and we just get to filter through our deck 3 more cards, essentially. Very, very handy. In the material deck, for more draw options, we got Backup Charger, just real simple to draw a card into memory for 3 influence on a 0-cost Regalia. It's really nice when we don't want to materialize anything else. Maybe we're not ready for go for our Huaji and we've already got our Berserk plate, or maybe we just need to materialize in the early game to that does something. Purifying Thurible also acts very similarly to it, but has the added benefit of also being able to disrupt the opponent's floating memory or other cards in their graveyard, which I very much like this card. I think it is definitely better than Backup Charger, but I found merits in running both of them still. Though I will say, as I further test, at least with other decks, I'm kind of leaning away from Backup Charger into Purifying Thurible and wanting to tech in another option. I think in this deck, there is a good case to run both, because if you're not leveling up or materializing one of your key cards, you want to be materializing stuff that lets you draw cards to be able to dig further in. But just a note there, if you feel like you need to fit in another non-engine Regalia item, you probably can take out the Backup Charger. And then we also have the Chalice of Blood. This is just a great way because we can definitely get 2 above 20 damage to draw 2 cards just to dig for some more pieces, or in the late game, just make sure you have enough influence to insulate your plays when you're going for the combo. It's definitely a very valid materialize the turn after you materialize Huaji and transform it, just to make sure you have cards in hand to be able to pay for whatever you need to. It does technically conflict with the tassel here, but then you just have to decide, do you prioritize getting the tassel on there for protection, or do you just need some card draw? And sometimes, maybe you're not set up yet and you just need the card draw and materialize. It is also still very solid for that. With that out of the way, I want to go over the non-engine we're running. Shout again to Incap, we already covered that card. But the other one is the Annihilation. So I'm writing this card, and this is more of a specific option against some of the decks I tend to play with. Again, I play very casually, so a lot of times we're going for big setup plays, and thus being able to just wipe all the opponent's stuff with a reserve cost up to that cost 7 is really, really strong. A lot of times it can be devastating, if not game-ending, if the opponent cannot negate this card. So 3 of this card because, again, it's non-engine, not crucial, and I have to get to level 3 anyway, but it is very handy against a bunch of decks. And usually can easily set up to give myself extra time to set up the combo, or just kind of clear the path for the combo to go off, since it does disproportionately affect the opponent over me, specifically because Stallion is immortal, which is really, really fun. I also realized I forgot to mention with other cards, pretty much all the consistency cards, Escape the Wreckage and Force Cakes running at 4 copies, same thing with Fairy Whisper and Calming Breeze. I don't think I covered those, so just kind of quickly covering that. So that is really the only non-engine we're running here. I know crazy non-engine in the material deck, but again, this is a combo deck. Really, the whole point is to be able to get to the combo, so I've kind of tailored these choices to do just that. But finally, I want to cover a few, actually, I realized I forgot to cover Berserk Plates as part of the engine, because this is probably the most important engine for Jin, since it, at the beginning of your recollection phase, deals you 3 damage to draw a card. Just every turn, as long as it survives, you get consistently be able to bring in more cards, which is very, very good, or force your opponent to use an answer on this instead of your Huaji. Also of note, the Scarlet Tassel can be linked to that to protect if you want to protect your draw engine, which is neat. As for the Misc cards, we've got another alt win condition in Xuanji of Sacrifice, just pretty typical for Jin decks. The more damage you have, the more damage it deals, and on enter it can deal 500 potential damage to your champion, means it wouldn't be extra damage on attack, to draw a card, which is really great. It replaces the card that you pay to be able to materialize it. Very handy, because of course sometimes this just gets answered, so at least you have a way to still push for damage if it's answered, or in tandem to give you a bit of extra reach. The other card that's a Misc option is Mend Flesh. This one is very handy because, again, sometimes we need to last longer to be able to find our pieces to facilitate the combo, especially since we need an extra turn to be able to transform the Huaji into the abyssal form. And Mend Flesh is just a great way to heal ourselves down to give us that extra turn. Running 3 copies of this card because it is handy to have it, and sometimes you do need multiple of it. So that is about it for the main deck. Briefly covering the side deck here, the big one I want to call it here, it's mostly just kind of a hodgepodge of stuff I'm testing out, not super refined. The real one I want to call here is Dungeon Guide. If you're up against a deck that Heavenly Guide just won't matter, and it's not even just non-level 3 decks, sometimes there's level 3 decks that will typically not materialize until after you do, or play at such a slower pace that you would much rather prefer a Dungeon Guide to be able to accelerate your game plan over a Heavenly Guide, since you can't reasonably expect to use it. Just swap in the Dungeon Guide for that. That's why that is there. Everything else is just, I don't really have any comments about it. It's just kind of what I threw in there for the time being, or is outdated, and I haven't bothered replacing it because I've been mostly tinkering with the main deck to try to get this concept to work the best it can. So with that, what are my kind of conclusive thoughts on this deck here? Well, it's a deck. It's not particularly resilient. It definitely has the capability to win if it can pop off, but I think the real challenge for a deck like this is the fact that, unlike a lot of other potent combo decks, the combo pieces exist on the board for multiple turns, meaning your opponent has multiple turns to be able to prevent the combo. So by focusing the deck so much into getting off this combo, but yet the combo is not naturally resilient, and is actually quite susceptible to opponents' answers, it makes it a really tough deck to feel like it performs well, because it pretty much is feast or famine. Either you're getting off the combo because the opponent didn't draw their cards to out it, and yay, it worked, or you're not really finding a way to win. You spent all this time and dedication of the deck to set this up for something that your opponent just had to fracturize to be able to remove the Huaji, our main source of damage. So, I mean, I can think of other ways to still tinker with it. Like, I don't think the concept is necessarily bad, but I'm at a point now where I think that general notion of feast or famine with this deck is just kind of how it is. Can probably kind of lower the susceptibility to those removals just a little bit, or speed it up. There's definitely ways to, I think, optimize this deck a bit further. But at the end of the day, I think my core frustration is I really just want to get off the combo, but and it's always going to be frustrating when I cannot. And I do think dedicating the deck solely to be able to do that ends up being more to the detriment of being able to consistently win games, to just make sure that when the stars align, you definitely will be winning the game this way. So if that's appealing to you, awesome. I think this will be a really fun deck. But generally speaking, I like to find a deck that can win a bit more consistently. I don't love feast or famine decks. And I've actually been exploring this concept in a bit of a different package that I think has a bit more success of working. Because, of course, as I outlined, Huaji has a great damage potential to be able to push and pressure, especially with the Zhaoyun. Like 10 damage between these two cards, they can deal 10 damage in a single swing. So what I'm actually testing right now is, what if instead of dedicating my deck to this package is simply a win condition for more of a mid-range deck? And early results are quite promising, and I at least feel better about that deck. Like, I am enjoying piloting that sort of deck more, because it's almost like by not focusing so much on that combo, I'm more likely to actually see it and have it come up and feel good. And it's probably just kind of eliminating all those games where I'm like, man, I couldn't get there. That sucked. But the other part is, I also wonder if it's a bit of, you're throwing so much pressure at the opponent in that sort of deck that if you're throwing pressure out ahead of this combo and this is your backup, it almost sets it up for better success, because it's like you forced your opponent's answers out and then are saying, hey, here's a second or third way to deal the game. Have fun. If it gets to that end point in the game and you haven't lost, a lot of times you're probably winning, which is really neat. But discussing that deck in more detail will probably come at a later date if I so choose. I have plenty more testing that I still want to conduct with this one, but I at least wanted to discuss this concept because I thought it was rather unique. I really hadn't seen anything quite like it, and I think Huaji of Heaven's Rise is just such a cool card. Transforming weapon, absolutely love it. And having spent so much time, I don't know, I feel kind of proud of having put together this deck, even if the end result is meh. But with that out of the way, I want to hear from you all. What kind of ideas do you have surrounding this sort of deck, or just Jin decks in general? I always appreciate the interaction down in the comments below. But with that being said, though, I will see you next time for a video and maybe a future Grand Archive video. We'll see. Have a good one.